Warning: this content may be disturbing for viewers under 18 and those sensitive to fear-inducing material. If you are under 18 or easily frightened, please do not watch. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. You think you know what it feels like to be alone. You've done it 1,000 times. Parents out for the night, house dark and quiet. Nothing but the hum of the refrigerator and the glow of your phone screen. Normal. Routine. Safe. But here's what nobody tells you the moment the front door closes and the lock clicks behind the last person who left. The house stops being yours. It becomes a question mark. Every creak in the hallway, every shadow that stretches wrong across the ceiling, every sound that doesn't quite fit. The ones your brain desperately tries to explain away because the alternative is too terrifying to consider. What if someone else is already inside? What if someone outside is watching, waiting, counting the seconds until you let your guard down? The stories you're about to hear are real. They were told by real people, teenagers, young adults, ordinary Americans who were home alone when something went wrong. Not movie wrong, not jump scare wrong, real wrong. The kind of wrong that changes how you sleep at night. The kind that makes you double-check the locks at 2 a.m., even though you know you already locked them. The kind that follows you for years. Some of these stories have explanations. Some of them don't. None of them will leave you the same. So settle in. Turn the lights up if you need to. And whatever you do, don't answer the door. He wanted me to come outside. Houston, Texas. A Tuesday night in late October. Marcus was 16 years old and completely alone. His parents had driven to San Antonio for a work conference, 3 days, back Friday. His older sister was at UT Austin, buried in midterms. The house was his. Quiet, familiar, totally manageable. He'd done this before. He wasn't scared of being alone. That changed at 9:17 p.m. Marcus had just stepped out of the upstairs bathroom, still towel drying his hair, when he heard it. The iron gate at the side of the house swinging open with that long, metallic groan it always made. Their dog, Ranger, exploded into a frenzy of barking from the living room below. Marcus went still. He moved instinctively toward the hallway window, the one that faced the side yard, and caught it in his peripheral vision. A figure, moving fast, hunched low to the ground, arms slightly out, almost scuttling, moving in a way that felt immediately, viscerally wrong. The figure slipped past the narrow strip of porch light and disappeared into the backyard. Marcus's heart was already hammering. From what little he'd seen, the person was wearing all dark clothing. Their posture was strange, too low, too stiff. Their hair was long and dark, hanging in pieces over their face, and their skin in that half-second of light, pale, unnaturally pale, sickly pale. Marcus moved quickly downstairs to the living room. Ranger was at the front door, no longer barking, now growling, low, sustained, the kind of growl that meant the dog was genuinely afraid. He's still back there, Marcus realized. He hasn't come back out. He stood by the front door for 2 full minutes, watching, waiting. Then, footsteps on the front porch. A different person this time. This one walked normally, approached calmly, stopped right at the security screen door. He was in his mid-20s, average build, wearing a plain gray hoodie. He looked ordinary. He looked completely, almost deliberately ordinary. "Hey," the man said through the screen. His voice was relaxed, almost friendly. "You seen my buddy? He came through here." Marcus kept his distance from the door. "Yeah," he said carefully. "I think he's out back." The man nodded slowly. "Okay, cool. Just so you know, I've been following him for the last hour. I don't really know him that well. I think he's on something, like drugs. He might be dangerous. Something cold moved through Marcus's chest. Wait, a second ago, he'd said, "Buddy?" Now I don't really know him. The man gave a quick, almost imperceptible smile and stepped off the porch, moving toward the backyard without another word. Marcus stood frozen. He wanted to call his parents. He should have called his parents right then. Instead, he waited, standing at the front door, listening to Ranger's low, persistent growl. For what felt like an hour, but was probably 3 minutes. Then the man in the gray hoodie came back. He had the pale figure with him now, the hunched one. Up close in the glow of the porch light, he looked even worse. Eyes unfocused, jaw working slowly, body vibrating with some restless, twitching energy. He was pacing back and forth on the narrow porch, back and forth, like a caged animal running the length of its enclosure. The man in the hoodie looked at Marcus through the screen. "Hey, look, sorry about all this," he said. Still calm, still friendly. "He's just really on edge right now. He'd feel a lot better if you could just come outside for a second. Just so he can see you're not a threat, you know. Just unlock the door and step out." Marcus felt something he could only describe later as a pressure, like the air in the room had changed, like the house itself was warning him. "Don't." The pale figure had stopped pacing. He was standing completely still now, directly at the screen, staring at Marcus, not blinking, not moving, just staring, with eyes that were too wide, that held something flat and terrifying behind them, like windows looking into a room where the lights were out. The silence stretched. Marcus didn't say anything. He didn't answer. He stepped forward slowly, not toward the door, but toward the French door that would seal the porch off entirely. His fingers reached for the handle. The man in the gray hoodie moved instantly. His arm shot through the gap in the security bars, reaching, grabbing, fingers extended, and Marcus threw himself backward, hit the wall, kicked the French door shut with both feet. The lock drove home with a sound like a gunshot. He ran for his phone, called his dad. His dad called the police. By the time the officers arrived, 11 minutes later, both men were gone. But the responding officer pulled Marcus aside and told him something that sat in his stomach like a stone. There had been a break-in on Marcus's street, 3 houses down, less than 45 minutes before Marcus heard that gate swing open. The cops never found them, and Marcus never forgot what the officer said before he left. "You did exactly the right thing by not opening that door. Whatever they wanted, it wasn't a good thing." He didn't sleep that night, or the night after. What haunts Marcus most, even now, years later, isn't the pale figure or the lying man in the gray hoodie. It's the ask. They hadn't tried to force their way in. They hadn't thrown a brick through a window. They had knocked. They had talked. They had tried with patient, practiced calm to convince a 16-year-old boy to unlock his own door and step outside. They wanted him out there with them. Whatever the reason, Marcus was home. He was alive. And the locks held. But it could have gone so differently. Stay with me, because the next story starts with a text message. A text from someone who was supposed to be safely at work, and it ends with a stranger standing at the foot of a bed. That person standing there wasn't my mom. Nashville, Tennessee, a Wednesday in February. Caleb was 22, living at home while he saved up to move out. His mom worked nights at Vanderbilt Medical Center 3 days a week. His 2 older brothers were gone, one in Chicago, one in grad school in Boston. On those Wednesday nights, it was just Caleb in the house. He'd had a couple friends over that evening. watched the Predators game, had a few beers, normal Wednesday stuff. His friends left through the back door around 10:30. Caleb went upstairs, put the leftover beers in the fridge, scrolled his phone for a while, and finally climbed into bed around midnight. He wasn't asleep yet. That half-awake state where you're conscious enough to hear things, but too relaxed to react quickly. When he heard it. Footsteps on the stairs, light, careful, measured. Mom's home early, he thought, and felt himself relax. She'd done that before, traded a shift, finished up ahead of schedule. He didn't even open his eyes as the footsteps reached the top of the stairs and moved down the hallway. He heard the bathroom door open and close. He heard, faintly, a cough from behind the door. His mom always coughed in the cold air. Nighttime allergies, she always said. He drifted. A few minutes passed. He heard his mom come out of the bathroom and head back downstairs. Then, the sound of cabinets, dishes clattering, someone moving around the kitchen with zero regard for the fact that it was past midnight. Caleb groaned into his pillow. He grabbed his phone off the nightstand and typed, "Mom, stop making so much noise. I'm trying to sleep." He put the phone down, closed his eyes again. The footsteps came back upstairs. Fast, this time. His bedroom door opened. Caleb didn't look up right away. He said with the irritation of someone who has been woken up twice, "Mom, I'm serious. Can you please?" He stopped. The hallway light wasn't on. His bedroom was dark. He could see the figure standing in the doorway, the outline of it, but no details, no face, just a shape, slightly hunched, standing completely still in the doorway. "Mom," he said, quieter now. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. He almost didn't check it, but it was late, and late-night texts had a way of making your stomach drop. So he picked it up automatically and looked at the screen. It was from his mom. "I'm still at the hospital, honey. Crazy night here. You okay?" Caleb read it twice. Then he looked up at the doorway. The figure was still there. Later, he would describe what happened in his body in that moment as a full system shutdown, followed by a reboot at maximum capacity. Every nerve, every muscle. His vision went sharp in a way that felt almost painful. He kept his voice completely even. "Mom," he said, "I need to get some sleep. I've got an early morning. Go to bed, okay?" He was buying time. He needed to think. He texted his mom with shaking fingers. "There is someone in the house. I thought it was you. Call the police. Right now. Please." 3 seconds passed. Then, okay. Calling now. The figure in the doorway hadn't moved. Then it did. It made a sound. The voice was a woman's, cracked, rough, like something that hadn't been used in a long time. And she was saying something, over and over, the same phrase in a low, broken loop. "Don't know where to go. Don't know where to go. Don't know where to go." And she was moving. She was walking toward the bed. "Get back!" Caleb screamed, lunging for the lamp switch, fingers scrambling on the nightstand, knocking it sideways before finding the switch and flooding the room with light. She was an old woman. White hair, wild and matted. Wrinkled hands outstretched, reaching for him. Clouded eyes fixed on his face. Wearing a house dress that was dirty and torn at the knee. Still moving toward him. Still repeating, "Don't know where to go." Caleb launched himself off the bed, past her. She reached for him, fingers brushing his arm, out through the doorway and into the hall. He grabbed the door handle and pulled it shut behind him, bracing his entire body against it. He felt her hit the door from the other side. She pushed. He pushed back. "I need to get out," she shrieked from behind the door, her voice climbing into something inhuman. And then she was pounding, both fists over and over, with a strength that shocked him, that rattled the door in its frame, that made his arms shake from the force of holding it. His phone was ringing. His mom calling over and over. He couldn't let go of the door. He stood there, alone in the dark hallway. No shoes. Arms braced against a door, being beaten from the other side by an elderly woman who had no idea where she was, for what felt like forever. The police arrived in 8 minutes. They knocked. Caleb let go of the door, heard it bang open behind him, sprinted to the front, threw it open, and screamed, "She's right behind me!" And she was. Coming down the hall, hands out, still murmuring. The officers caught her before she reached the door, had her against the wall in seconds, cuffed her and walked her to the cruiser. She was evaluated that night. She had severe dementia. She'd wandered blocks from a facility, somehow found her way into the unlocked back door, the one Caleb's friends had left through 3 hours earlier, the one Caleb had forgotten to lock. And she'd been in the house for all of it, while he scrolled his phone, while he lay in bed, the whole time. The cough in the bathroom, the cabinets in the kitchen, that had all been her. Caleb was physically unharmed, but he will tell you, to this day, that he cannot fall asleep without checking the bedroom door, that he wakes up at every creak, that some part of his brain that learned something new that night has never fully unlearned it. There are things worse than someone trying to break into your house. Sometimes, by the time you realize someone is already inside, they've been there for a while. Hold on. We're not done yet. The next story comes from the middle of nowhere. A ranch, a loaded rifle, and 2 voices at a window saying something that still gives me chills. We see you. Rural Colorado, June. Around 1 a.m., Ethan grew up on his father's ranch outside of Pueblo. Hundreds of acres of flat land, cattle, the whole thing. He'd never loved it. Too quiet, too isolated, too far from everything. He'd heard the old Courage the Cowardly Dog cartoon as a kid say it best. Creepy things happen in the middle of nowhere. He believed it completely and planned to move to Denver the moment he had enough saved. That summer, his parents were in Scottsdale for the week, anniversary trip. His younger brother, Tyler, had left for a friend's place and wouldn't be back until morning. It was a hot night for Colorado. Ethan had the windows open, watching TV in the living room, not planning on sleeping anytime soon. The clock on the cable box read 1:06 a.m. That's when the motion light on the back patio snapped on. Not the kind of light that activates for a moth or a cat. This was a serious sensor. Calibrated, his father always said, for human movement. The thing lit up the whole back end of the property like a floodlight. Ethan stood up. He assumed Tyler. He moved to the window and looked out. Nobody there. He pulled out his phone and called Tyler. No answer. He sat back down on the couch, but he didn't relax. His father had drilled something into him since childhood about this property, about what isolation meant. You are your own first responder out here. There were no neighbors close enough to hear anything. The nearest town was 20 minutes away. His father kept 3 guns. Ethan knew where each one was. He stared at the TV. He wasn't watching it anymore. Knock, knock, knock. The front door. 3 heavy knocks. Ethan was on his feet before the 3rd knock finished. He crossed to the door. His father had installed a peephole. Anyone coming to this house goes out of their way to get here, so we need to know who they are before we open up. And Ethan pressed his eye to it. The porch was empty. He waited. Nothing. He checked his phone. No texts from Tyler, no calls. He told himself, ding-dong ditch. Some bored local kids, maybe. Maybe Tyler screwing with him. He texted his brother, "If this is you, I'm not opening the door. He sat back down on the couch, and then the living room window exploded with sound. Not a knock, a pound, so sudden and so loud that Ethan literally left the couch, twisting sideways in the air before he landed. The sound echoed through the whole room. And then voices, two of them, simultaneous, one low and male, one higher, female, speaking the same words at exactly the same time, with a flat, rehearsed quality that was somehow worse than screaming, "We see you." Ethan did not move for a full second. Then he ran, not to the door, not to a phone. He ran upstairs to his father's bedroom, dropped to his knees beside the bed, and pulled the rifle out from underneath it. His hands were shaking, but his mind was clear. His father had shown him exactly how to load it, had made him practice it, had told him, if you ever need it, you won't have time to figure it out. He loaded it. He went back downstairs. He moved to the dining room, the room with the window he'd forgotten to close the blinds on, and found it empty. The window was dark. The shapes were gone. He stood in the center of the dining room with a loaded rifle and listened to the house. Nothing. He made a decision. He went to the front door, unlocked it, and stepped outside. He did a full perimeter of the house, fast, quiet, scanning. He checked on the cattle. He checked the fence line. He found nothing, no one. The property appeared clear. He went back inside, locked everything, went upstairs, lay on top of his covers with the rifle beside him. 30 minutes of silence. Then the pounding started again. The front door, downstairs, not knocking this time, pounding. Both fists, and a man's voice, not words, just raw sound, screaming at the top of his lungs, sustained and frantic like something being torn open. Ethan was off the bed before he was conscious of moving. He went to the living room window, shoved it open, aimed the rifle into the darkness, and fired once into the air above the porch. The screaming stopped. The pounding stopped. 2 sets of footsteps crossed the wooden porch at a full run. He could hear them, clear and rapid. And then they hit the gravel drive. And then they were gone. The sound faded into nothing. The crickets came back. Ethan stood at the window for a long time. He called his father at 2 a.m. His father answered on the second ring. He told him everything. His father was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You protected the property. That's exactly what you were supposed to do." In the morning, Ethan called Tyler and established what he'd suspected. His brother had been at his friend's place all night. He had no idea what had happened. The 2 voices at the window, the coordinated pounding, the simultaneous "we see you." None of it ever got a full explanation. What Ethan knows for certain, there were 2 people. They'd been watching him through the undraped window for long enough to know his exact position in the room. They had moved in sync. They had planned this together. Why? He moved to Denver 4 months later. He's never gone back to that ranch at night. And he's never forgotten the way those 2 voices sounded. Identical in rhythm, identical in timing, like they'd said it before. We see you. We have one more story, and I want you to pay attention because this one doesn't happen all at once. It happens slowly, over the course of one long, terrible night, and it ends at a 2nd floor window. He had been climbing the side of my house, Portland, Oregon, a Friday night in early spring. Jade was 19. Her parents were visiting her aunt in Sacramento for the long weekend. She had the house to herself, and honestly, that had felt exciting when they left Friday morning. By Friday night, it felt different. She'd been on a FaceTime call with her best friend Alyssa for most of the evening. It was almost midnight and they were still talking, half watching something on Netflix on their respective phones, laughing about their week, when Jade got up to pace around her room the way she always did when she was on a long call. She passed her bedroom window. She looked out without thinking. The kind of reflexive glance you give a window at night, not expecting to see anything. And she saw him. A man on the sidewalk across the street, standing completely still, facing her house, facing her window. "Alyssa," she said, keeping her voice controlled. "There's a guy outside." She tilted the phone toward the window. Alyssa squinted. "I can't really see. Is he just standing there?" "Just standing there, facing me." "Jade, call your mom and hang up." She did. She hung up with Alyssa and called her mother, who was in Sacramento and had already had a glass of wine and was thoroughly unhelpful. "Turn your lights off and close the blinds, and he'll go away." "That's just a person standing outside, baby. You're fine." Jade turned the lights off, closed the blinds. She sat in the dark for approximately 90 seconds before the curiosity became unbearable. She lifted one edge of the blind and looked. He was closer. Not across the street anymore. On the sidewalk directly in front of her house, still facing up, still looking at her window, still perfectly, unnervingly still. She called 911. The dispatcher asked whether he had any weapons. She said she couldn't tell. The dispatcher told her to observe, don't engage, and if he stepped onto her property to call back immediately. A patrol car will pass through your area to discourage him. Jade hung up and called Alyssa back. They talked. Jade lay in her bed and tried not to imagine things. Alyssa, to her credit, kept the conversation light, kept Jade from spiraling. After about 5 minutes, Alyssa told her to check again. He was gone. Jade stood at the window with the blinds pulled back. The sidewalk was empty. She waited, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, standing in the dark. And then she saw the patrol car come slowly down her street. The little spotlight on the driver's side swept the sidewalk, the front yard, the neighboring properties. The car paused briefly in front of her house, then rolled on. He was gone. The cop had confirmed it. The threat was over. Jade told herself that on a loop as she got back into bed, still on FaceTime with Alyssa. They wrapped up the call around 12:30. Jade put her phone on the charger, pulled her covers up, and tried to decompress. She was almost asleep when she heard it. A creak from outside. She'd heard her house settle at night before, the way old houses pop and shift in the cold. This was different. This had rhythm to it, a weight and a release, over and over, like something bearing down on the wooden trellis on the side of the house. She told herself she was being paranoid. She stayed in bed. She stared at the ceiling. The sound stopped. Silence. 90 seconds of total quiet. Then, crack. Louder this time. A sharp, definitive impact. Closer. Too close. Wrong side of the wall. And Jade turned her head toward the window. There was a figure on the other side of the glass. He was at her second-floor window. The sound suddenly made perfect sense. The rhythmic creaking, the building pressure, the slow climb up the side of her house in the dark, while she lay in bed 3 feet away, while the patrol car drove off into the night, while she convinced herself it was over. He had never left. He had waited, and he had climbed up. Jade moved. She crossed to the far window, away from him, threw it open and screamed into the night. Not words, just sound. Loud. The kind of sound that cracks across a neighborhood and pulls people out of bed. She grabbed her phone and called 911 again. "The man is at my second-floor window. He's outside my window right now. Please send someone immediately." The dispatcher told her to stay away from the window and keep screaming if she could hear him. She heard the window beginning to move. He was trying to come in. And then she heard a voice, her neighbor, old Mr. Castellano, who slept with his bedroom window open, shouting from next door. She couldn't make out the words, but they were loud, and they were directed outward, and a few seconds later the figure at her window stopped moving. She looked. He was gone. She stared at the empty window frame for what felt like an impossibly long time, certain he would come back, certain this wasn't over. The police arrived in 6 minutes. She opened the front door and talked to them for a long time. According to Mr. Castellano, who came out in his robe and slippers to speak to the officers, she would always love that man for that. The suspect had jumped from the trellis and run north on foot. Mr. Castellano had gotten a description. The officers took it seriously. They couldn't promise her they'd find him. They said they'd patrol the area for the rest of the night. They kept their word. Jade saw the cruiser pass 3 more times before dawn, but she didn't sleep. She sat up in the corner of her room with the lights on and her phone fully charged, and every door and window locked until 6 a.m., when the sky started going gray, and she finally let herself breathe. She still thinks about the timeline, about the gap between when the patrol car left and when she heard the first creak. 15 minutes. Maybe 20. He had waited in the dark, in the cold, patient, watching the police car drive away, and then he had started to climb. Premeditated. Determined. She wonders sometimes what would have happened if she hadn't screamed, if Mr. Castellano's window had been closed, if she'd fallen asleep faster. She doesn't let herself finish that thought. 4 stories, 4 houses, 4 nights that nobody in any of them will ever fully get past. What connects them? What makes them stay with you long after the lights come back on? Isn't the violence. None of these stories end in violence. What connects them is something much harder to shake. The realization that ordinary moments, a gate swinging open, footsteps on a staircase, a text from your mom, a man on a sidewalk, can be the first sentence of the worst night of your life, and you won't know it until you're already in the middle of it. Marcus's instinct not to open that door, Caleb's split-second decision to play dumb and text quietly instead of panic, Ethan's muscle memory from years of practice with his father's rifle, Jade's scream through an open window. These are the things that change the endings of these stories. Not luck, not coincidence, choices. Your home is supposed to be the safest place you know, and it still can be. If you trust what your gut tells you when something feels wrong, if you don't talk yourself out of that tightening in your chest, if you don't open the door just because someone on the other side of it asked you nicely, lock your back doors, check your windows. And if you're ever home alone and something feels off, the kind of off that runs deeper than logic can explain, trust it.